All right, in today's podcast, we're going to talk about 9 lessons learned in real estate investing, plus one cautionary piece of advice. So my name is Chris Lopez. I'm one of the co-hosts along with Jenny Bayless. Jenny, good afternoon.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Good. I'm excited to do this podcast because this is, it's a little bit different in terms of more just some great, looking back in wisdom. And how this podcast came about is, you and I met a couple weeks ago. It was right around the half-year mark, and we got talking, family, business, investing, kind of catching up on goals and everything like that. And as you were talking, you were sharing how you made a shift in a lot of your investments right now. You're focusing on doing some debt reduction versus like heavy acquisition mode. And as you're doing that, you start reflecting back on lessons that you learned up to this current phase in your investing career to start sharing with clients and audience members out there. So that's where this came from. I'm excited that you're sharing it. So thank you. And where should we start? Do we just jump into it, or where do you want us to start?
Yeah, I think let's just start from the top. And I'm pretty sure that we'll probably go off on a few tangents along the way. I think that's probably best.
All right. What's lesson number 1?
So lesson 1, sewer scope. Always get a sewer scope. So not much to say here other than the fact that for $100, $200, you can save tens of thousands of dollars in future headaches. And I can only say, trust me, because I have experienced the downside of not getting a sewer scope before. So it's a very actionable piece of advice that everyone who is about to purchase a property can take note of.
I agree. Every single month with our clients, we always sewer scope, and we always have some sewer that is going to cost $10,000 plus that is either blows up the deal or is handled through the inspection resolution process. So Jenny, great. Lesson number 1. What's lesson number 2?
All right. Delayed gratification is a must. So I think a lot of people are attracted to real estate thinking, hey, I can exit my day job, that sort of thing. And I really feel as if it has a misunderstanding surrounding it. It's really not a get rich quick type of technique or type of investment. I consider it grow a nice amount of wealth over a long period of time. That's kind of how I would describe it. So I think that delayed gratification is key. And if you grow to become a successful investor, you can see the forest for the trees. So if you're going to be searching for immediate gratification with rental real estate, you aren't going to get it. And I think that having misaligned expectations with basically reality, you're just going to be really disappointed in that case. So something that comes to mind really easily is that if you're a rental property investor and you're told by your property manager or your tenant, hey, the oven's broken, you need to replace the oven. If you have an immediate view of it, you're going to be really irritated. Hey, that's $500 down the drain. 5 years from now, you shouldn't care that you spent $500 on that oven 5 years ago, because you're going to be able to see it, from a more well-rounded point of view. So you're going to see equity, you're going to see cash flow. That $500 5 years ago should not impact you, and I think that it's really important to take a step back and think about that.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm nodding my head here while you're talking about it. And this is, I think everyone hears it. And I think for some people, it's great advice, but really internalize that, because different ways of saying that, say, being patient. Realize today, if you consistently stick with the plan, you let the market do its thing, you let, the property and your interest basically compound, over a decade, over a couple decades, you can create a lot of wealth with a very high probability that you'll get there. Mm-hmm. So I love it, Jenny. So sewer scope, delayed gratification, number 3.
Know what your strengths are and what they are not. So I think you probably know where I'm going to go with this for me personally. When we first started investing, my husband and I, we tried to do a lot of the things ourselves, painting, minor repairs. Guess what? We are not good at painting. We are not good at doing repairs. So there are people that do this as this is their living. They're experts at doing these types of projects. So it's like, okay, well, instead of us doing something, not looking good, and then eventually having to pay a professional to come along and fix whatever we did, just kind of letting go of that control. I'm sure everyone knows I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to our rental properties, but yeah, just letting go of that, giving the professionals the freedom to do what they need to do, stepping back, and more so focusing my time and energy as to the areas that I am good at. So repairs, I'm not good at. Thinking of long-term strategy, financing techniques, I would say that that's probably where I excel in real estate investing. So just kind of letting go and focusing where my strengths are.
What's number 4, Jenny?
Lending. So I think that it's really important to put a lot of focus on lending, even though most people out there would probably agree it's one of the more boring aspects of real estate investing. And I probably have mentioned this story before, but when I first started investing, I tried to get the deal first and the lender second. This is absolutely wrong. And that's something that our group, we teach, investors and clients, get the lending lined up, and then we can talk about purchasing the deal. So that's absolutely the correct way of doing it. About 4 years ago, one day before we got to the closing table, I wasn't able to do a cash out refinance because the lender and I weren't on the same page. And I was not aware of a concept called seasoning before I could pull cash out of a cash out refinance. So I was penalized in the fact that I had to do a rate and term refinance and then do a cash out refinance a couple months later. So I not only had my cash stuck in that BRRRR property for longer than I would have wanted, I had to eat 2 sets of refinancing costs. So that was kind of my penalty to myself for not going about it the right way.
Yeah, and this is a really great thing to talk about because, for a lot of people, they just, they see all the ads, see interest rates, and the view lenders, who's going to have the best interest rate or the cheapest closing cost? And, you definitely don't want to go for the cheapest rate. Go for like the most qualified professional because there's always someone cheaper. But I mean, a lot of times that might be like $10, $12 a month, actually, once you figure out the cost on there. But if they can't get the job done, that cheaper rate doesn't matter. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jenny. Make sure you have lending in place and make sure you communicate plans and ideas and dates. I've always learned the more I communicate, the better, because anytime I do an assumption, assumptions usually don't work out, at least for me. So communicate and work with your lender.
Exactly. And then, so the next lessons learned is real estate investing is very analytical, but it's important that you always trust your gut. And you can't put a number to what a gut check is. I do recommend that you do listen to other people that are more experienced than you, but know that you have a personal plan that's unique to your goals and your life. And you're the only one that really knows what that is, in and out. So I think that it's really important to kind of focus on that. As time has gone on, I've actually allowed my gut to speak louder than my brain. And I'm glad that I've done that. So even mathematically speaking, it would make more sense for me right now to trade up some of my properties and to get into larger and more complex properties out there. But the properties that I do have, I enjoy owning them. They're getting me to my goals. And this is, kind of where this kind of comes full circle, in my opinion.
Now, that's a lot coming from an analytically minded CPA, I'm assuming, right? So that's really good advice and something that it's really good self-awareness on your part.
Thanks. Yeah, I think.
What's numbers? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. What were we going to say?
Well, I was going to say, what's number 6?
All right. Repairs versus replacements. I think that those two words have very different meanings to people. But if you think about it, sometimes it's just easier to replace than to repair something. And it's kind of counter to what we're taught, in terms of, being mindful of our expenses and everything. So sometimes it's just not worth the time and money to send an appliance repair person over there 3 times, opposed to just replacing the unit. So, just kind of remembering the fact that, that's 3 times that you're going to have to coordinate with the tenant and the repair person. And, you're going to have to pay for parts, labor. By the time that all that is done, really consider, oh, I could have just spent $500 on a new unit and be done with it. And just, yeah, I think it's a hard shift to think about, and you probably have to go through it a few times. But once you do, I think that it's something to definitely keep in the back of your mind.
That's a great lesson learned. Number 7.
All right. There is no such thing as a perfect deal, which I think is going to be painful for a lot of people to hear out there because, everyone's searching for that perfect deal. But I would say that not a single property that I have, that I own at the moment have I ever thought it was a perfect deal. Yet I am extremely happy with all of them. So I think that's really important to highlight. There's always something making it less than perfect. And I always see real estate as just a series of trade-offs compared to price. I mean, even for your forever home, that in itself is still a series of trade-offs. It might be to a lesser extent. But condition of the property, if it's in poor condition, you should expect a lower price, but now your risk has increased, vice versa. Location, maybe the house is next to a house that looks like it's about to fall apart. So that would be a detracting criteria on that property that you're looking to buy. So yeah, I don't think that I've ever bought a single property and on day one I said, oh, that was a home run.
Oh, I agree. And so far, this is my favorite lesson, Jenny. There's no perfect deal. And I've just seen over my years, as I've, learned investing, learned entrepreneurship, learned life, that a lot of people who spend time on finding the perfect property, the perfect business plan, the perfect partner, whatever it is, perfect, they often never do anything or find anything.
Yep.
And so I never go for perfection. I go for, cool, this is pretty good. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, because pretty good is better than nothing.
Yes.
So I think that, it's hard to make that leap, especially the first couple of properties, not thinking, oh my gosh, I can anticipate everything that's going to happen. This is a slam dunk. It's really hard to kind of get over that mental hurdle. So I think it's important to think about that.
All right. Number 8.
All right. It's okay to make mistakes. So I
that's a really good one. Yes.
So I've made a lot of mistakes in my investing, a lot, some really embarrassing ones, just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I would do something so stupid, but it's all worked out because on the first hand, I'm not ever going to do that again. So I've learned from the mistake. So it's going to save me in the long run, hopefully, that I don't, repeat it. But in 10, 20 years from now, minor mistakes like that, I'm not going to care that I did it. So it's just, real estate is so forgiving, especially, investment, long-term rental real estate is so forgiving. And I think that you need to give yourself some grace and the room to make mistakes, because that's how you learn.
I completely agree with there. I mean, that is exactly how you learn. Even if you hear it in a podcast, read in a book, that's very different than doing it yourself and realizing, oh yeah, well now I really understand that piece of advice from that person. So I agree. I don't think mistakes are a bad thing. That's just part of life. Accept it, move on. And a lot of times I'm like, hey, the more mistakes I make, that just means the more money I'll eventually make in the future. Because I look at those as lessons learned.
Yep. And
all
then
right, number 9. Number 9.
So number 9, I'm stealing this from Chelsea on our team. So she said this in a team meeting and it just really stuck with me. And what she said was, if you're ever feeling frustrated about a property today, scroll to the 5-year tab on that property's analysis. And
why?
Just because you will see that in 5 years, that, broken faucet is not going to matter. Yeah, it's taking up space in your brain today, but in 5 years, you're going to have decent equity growth. You're going to have debt pay down. You're going to have better cash flow, hopefully. So just, if you're having a bad day today, think about what it's going to be like in the future. And just, if I really start and go, oh yeah, I was super annoyed about when such and such happened a few years ago. I'm like, it didn't make a difference in my life today. I'm just thinking about it because I'm trying to right now. But yeah, it didn't make a difference.
And number 9 really goes along with number 2. So, hey, you're looking at the 5-year big picture. That goes back to the delayed gratification, that if you have time in the market, that's much more important than timing the market.
Yep.
All right. So we've gone through 9 of these, Jenny. Always see your scope. Delayed gratification is a must. Know your strengths and your weaknesses. Get your lending partner in place. Trust your gut to offset your analytical mind. No repairs versus replacements. Don't get stuck in perfection mode, looking for the perfect deal. It's okay to make mistakes. And number 9, when you get frustrated, look at the 5-year projection. So I like these, but I'm really curious, what's the cautionary tale? Because I have not seen these until we've done this podcast. So I'm waiting. What's the asterisk? What's the cautionary tale?
So thankfully, I can't call this a lesson learned, thankfully, but it's to always make sure that you have adequate reserves. So I haven't been burned by the absence of reserves, but I know analytically they're needed. Anything can happen. High vacancy, large repairs, another pandemic. I mean, anything can happen. And I know, cognitively that is a matter of when, not if. But emotionally, it also helps me sleep at night knowing that everything that I've worked through for items 1 through 9 is getting protected.
All right. So you got these lessons, or the listeners have these lessons. What should people do to internalize these or take this away and put into action items?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say probably just, listen to this a few times and then maybe think about when you've caught yourself, especially like the perfect deal piece. I think that's something that everyone can probably relate to. So think about times where you've caught yourself in that, and press the fast forward button and say, do I really think that this would have bothered me too much? Probably not. And just kind of figure out ways to help yourself cope with that. That's kind of how I've done that.
So as we wrap this up, I agree with you. Listen to it. And, my goal is always try to take one nugget from things away. And this is, when you have these lessons learned, there's always different layers on there. So I would definitely encourage people, listen to it, read it, whatever your, mode of learning is. But there's some great nuggets in here. So Jenny, final thoughts before we wrap up? No,
just everyone will have their own version of these. Hopefully we can get from our audience their lessons learned in 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, actually, if you guys have lessons that you learn, want to add to this list, email Jenny, post on social, leave in the comments somewhere, or actually give us here. It'd actually be fun to kind of see lessons learned. I always love learning what other lessons other people have learned, because it's kind of like a free college class you get to take rather than having to pay for it. Oh, great. Jenny, you made that mistake. It's a good way to learn as well. So listeners out there, if you guys have lessons learned or things to add or things to debate with us, reach out to us. Jenny, thank you so much. This has been a great podcast as always.
Thanks, Chris.